Well, thanks very much again for having me be part of this. And I will just say I want to thank Carl and I want to thank Newton and others who have all done multiple presentations to share with you how we are doing our best to utilize funding, not just nationally, but internationally. And this is all based on generosity from you. And I can't begin to say as a researcher what the support that comes from groups like you means to research, not just for our programs, but for patients around the globe. Because remember, when you invest in research, you help programs understand the disease better, new drugs get developed, better understanding of biology, and all of that actually impacts where patients go and how they do in the future. Just to rewind for a second, when I started in this field nearly 30 years ago, and if you were to say, what did we know about Waldenstrom's, the answer was nothing. Everything we did, we just extrapolated from other kinds of lymphoma or from a disease called multiple myeloma. Now we can safely say we have a fundamental, deep understanding about Waldenstrom's. We have a lot more to learn, but we have a very comprehensive understanding, and we have, you just heard from this debate, multiple drugs that work very effectively, which was not true, hence the 3 to 5 year survival story that you would have heard if you read old literature. So all of this matters a lot. So what I'm going to do is just talk about some of the recent funding and the recent funded grants very briefly, and just again wanted to start right out the gate to say thank you to you as a community, because the reason I'm up here talking about that is because you give the funding that allows this to be possible. So these are the 2023 research grant report. Again, just to give folks a little bit of an understanding of how this works. There are different categories of funding that we request, and I want to credit Tom and others who have helped to develop this over time. We're looking to fund new investigators, youngsters, to bring them in. I think Carl was talking about having his 13-year-old in the basement who can help him do stuff. Bottom line is we want the next generation to be excited about Waldenstrom's research. We don't want the old guys like me being the only people in the field. And that definitely is coming with career development awards. Sometimes people have a good idea, but they haven't really got enough evidence yet to say it's the best way to do it. So again, I think Glenn was actually one of the people that founded this idea of a seed grant, a grant that puts just a small amount of money, short period of time, but the whole idea is take your good idea and test it. And if it looks like it's going to be good, then you can submit for a bigger grant because you'll have what we need, what we call preliminary data. And that then leads to the roadmap grants and the enhanced roadmap grants, which are basically ways in which you bring that information where you say, I have an idea, I've tested it preliminarily, it looks good, here's what I'd like to do more that would really move the field forward. And those are then those roadmap grants. So requests for applications go out. Investigators around the world, and I'll show you it truly is international. When Carl was talking about international being in the name, that is exactly correct, because globally this is making an impact. Investigators submit either because they want to be a new investigator and they want to be as supported as they build their career, or they have that great idea, the seed grant, and they want to get money to test it, or they have a bigger idea and they are putting in for a project that gets funded then over the next 2 years to actually do the work and the research. So I'm just going to highlight a little bit as to what's out there. So what you see here are the grants that are funded. The first 4 are those that are funded as full what we call roadmap grants. You also heard us say that we actually ask the community, what are the key questions we need to know? And when people submit their applications, they need to address those things. So we're not funding weird and wonderful stuff that nobody gives a rip about. We're funding stuff that really matters because they are key questions that matter to the Waldenstrom's community. So Dr. Hunter is basically looking at variety of different genes and what they call isoforms. So genes actually can come in different shapes and sizes. The same gene can actually be changed and not be exactly identical. Whether it's a longer version of a gene or a shorter version of a gene, may make a difference to how tumor cells grow. That's what he's going to be studying. Dr. Mondello is very interested in a gene called IRF4. This is actually a gene that regulates B cell growth, so clearly very important in any B cell cancer like Waldenstrom's, but it also interferes and interacts with the environment around the B cell. Nothing happens in isolation. Tumor cells and the environment are kind of a little too cozy, and sometimes that environment is helping the cancer cell. And the way in which the cancer cell can tell the environment to help it is by providing proteins like IRF4 that will do that. That's what she's doing. Dr. Spagarin, who I have to highlight, is from Amsterdam. He's looking at various ways of understanding why new treatments like, for example, venetoclax, which targets a protein called BCL2. BCL2 is a death-controlling protein. Your cells need to know that they got to die after a while, and if they don't, they live too long, and if they live too long, you get Waldenstrom's. So can we trigger that dying cycle? That's what venetoclax is trying to do. The challenge is not everybody benefits always from the treatment, and it's not always durable. So why is that? And can you understand that better? And a lot of it has to do with how the cell cozies up with its neighbors, like I just said. Dr. Spagarin is looking at that. And then Dr. Bagratuni from Athens is again looking at ibrutinib resistance. So not just ibrutinib itself, but BTK family. As you could see, the responses are great. They last a long time. The problem is, eventually, in many people, the benefit starts to run out. Why is that? What changed? Why did the cells become resistant to what was initially a very effective therapy? Clearly an important question that their team is looking at. So those are all what we would call roadmap grants. These are all funding that lasts over a 2-year period. The last here is one of the up-and-comers. So this is more of a seed grant. This is a grant where it's a good idea. It's just funded for 1 year. But the question here is, cells, B cells, as they age, put themselves at greater risk for becoming cancerous. And this study is really understanding this impact of those mutations that you heard and what they do to these age-associated B cells. These age-associated B cells, interestingly, also are the ones that cause autoimmunity. And you'll know that a lot of the side effects and problems can come from this protein sticking to the wrong cells. And so really understanding that biology is a very novel idea, and this would create initial data for a subsequent grant. So those are the grants that are funded for projects. Now we're funding people. These 3 are career development grants. This is the idea here is to bring new players into the fold, as it were, interested in Waldenstrom's. So Dr. Vincent Fabre is from France, and she will be doing the study of the microenvironment and BCR signaling. He has a Waldenstrom's mouse model. Got Dr. Gutera, I hope I said her name right, is looking at ERK regulation as a novel way to check. And ERK is, again, a pathway inside tumor cells, and it actually provides a growth advantage. And then Dr. Abikun is looking at TP53 aberrations and seeing that can be used for Waldenstrom's therapies. And TP53 is the quality control in your cell. And if it's not working and it just lets any kind of dreck go by, then all kinds of badness can happen in your tumor. You need to turn up quality control to a higher level. So these people are folks that are going to be, hopefully, the future superstars in the Waldenstrom's field. And I guess I would, Newton, turn this over to you, because these are your expenses, etc. So thank you, everybody.